So the story begins, showing a woman named Annie, which is very high, and her husband's name is Peter. Now here it is revealed that Annie is Peter's second wife. Peter's first wife was Rebecca, and he has a son named David from Rebecca. Now in the next scene, we see that David is having some conversation with Annie's two daughters, and she gifts a chain to both of them, seeing which David becomes very happy. Now seeing this, we come to know that there is a lot of love between these three siblings, but David does not like Annie much. After this we see that one day David has some talk with his dad, due to which David angrily walks out of the house. Here Peter tells Anne that I think David is not my child at all. Surely my first wife must have slept with someone else, and this must be her child. But Anne pacifies him, saying that there is no such thing. He is your only son. Actually, he is still a child, and he doesn't have that much understanding yet. But Peter tells Annie that he is no longer a child. He can create many more children like himself. Well, after this we see that one day Annie finds a ring in one of David's jeans pocket. Seeing this, Annie realizes that David must have stolen it. That's why she calls David and says, "What have you stolen? And you won't talk to anyone at home from today onwards? If you talk to anyone, I will tell everyone about your theft." Now a few days later we see that David brings his girlfriend to his house and takes her to his room for sex. Now after going to the room, both of them were making so many noises while having sex that even sitting outside starts feeling nauseous, and she starts missing her Peter, and at the same time she also feels that now her Peter is something to her. Can't do it? And thinking this, she falls asleep. After this, we see that Annie and David were now spending a lot of time together, because Annie was very much impressed by the voices she heard in the night, and she also wanted to do all this with David. Now slowly both of them started coming very close to each other. Now after this we see that one day there is a party at their house, but Anne was feeling very boring in this party. So she sits outside with David. Here a plan is made for both of them to go at once. Now after going out, both of them end up having a few too many drinks there. Annie tells David here that I heard very loud voices of you and your girlfriend that day. Looks like you had enjoyed a bit too much that day, and as soon as she says this, she starts kissing David, and then after some time David leaves from there. Now we see that Annie is only thinking about David every day because she just had to have sex with David anyhow. She wanted to get David by any means necessary. After this we see that Anne was becoming very upset. Wasn't he able to control himself? So one night her patience breaks and she sneaks into David's room and has a strong romance with him. Now Annie's thirst was so much that she started living with her husband Peter during the day and David at night. Gradually, Annie had become so obsessed with David that if Peter was at home, she would take David and go into the woods, where they used to romance openly. Now after a few days, we see that David has also started getting used to Annie. After this we see that one day suddenly AC, Annie's sister, comes and she sees these two romancing. Now seeing all this, Annie's sister does not like it at all, and Annie too feels very ashamed. So she breaks up with David. But now things have gone too far. Actually, because David was used to Annie now, because of which he started doing very strange things. One day we see that David is sitting on a very big tree, because of which everyone tells him to get down from the tree, but David falls down from there, and then his father Peter runs to pick him up. But David suddenly gets up and starts laughing and says that I was just pranking and wanted to scare you. Now we see that one day Annie goes to her sister's house and tells her sister that please don't tell anything to Peter. I have broken up with David. But his sister does not believe his words, and then Annie leaves from there. After this we see that one day Annie goes to Peter's office, where she sees David and Peter talking to each other in a garden in the office. And then after some time, Peter comes to Annie and tells her that I have found out everything about you and David, because he has told me all the truth. But Anne tells him that David has been lying about everything, so that you leave me. Now listening to Annie, Peter also gets very confused as to who is telling the truth. Now Annie, with her sweet words, convinces Peter that your son David has lied, and at the same time, she tells Peter about David's theft. After this, in the next scene, we see that all three are sitting and talking, where David gets very angry and he spits on Annie's face and leaves. Now we see a scene after a long time where David comes to meet Anne, and he is telling Annie that it would be better if you tell Peter the truth, and if you don't then I will blame you. I will file a case. But Annie refuses David clearly and leaves from there. Now David also starts going straight to Peter from there, but Annie stops him from outside and does not let him go inside the house to Peter. Now a few days after this we see that one day Peter calls his first wife and asks her about David. In fact, David has been missing for the last several days, and that is why Peter is making all the inquiries. Now, because of David not being found anywhere, he also writes a report in the police station that his son is missing for the last several days. After this, we are shown the scene of the next day where David's dead body is found behind their house, and when Annie comes to know about this, she gets very scared. Because Anne did not allow Peter to come inside the house that day, and Peter died there due to extreme cold that day. Now both of them are very sad due to this accident, and with this